And going out from there, he comes to his hometown, and the disciples follow him. And on the Sabbath, he was in the synagogue and he was teaching. People were astounded at his teaching and were saying, where does this guy get this? Yeah, what's the wisdom given to him that such works of power come about through his hands? Isn't this the construction worker, the son of Mary? Aren't his brothers James and Joseph and Judas and Simon? And don't his sisters live here with us? And he was a stumbling block to them. And Jesus said, a prophet never lacks honor except in his hometown and among his family and in his household. And he wasn't able to do there even one work of power. Except he laid his hands on a few ill people and healed them. And he was astounded at their lack of trust. And going out from there, he was moving through the region. And he summoned his 12 disciples, and he began to send them out 2 by 2. And he was giving them authority. And he was telling them to proclaim the word. And he was saying that they should take nothing on the journey except a walking stick only. No beggar's bag, no bread, no coins stashed in the belt, but to strap on sandals and not take 2 tunics. And he was saying to them, whenever you enter into a house, remain there till you go out from there. And if any place doesn't receive you or hear you, then shake the dust off your feet as testimony against them. So they went out, and they proclaimed that people should turn around, and they were driving out demons, and they were anointing with oil many ill people and healing them. Now, Herod heard about Jesus because his name was becoming known. People were saying, oh, John the Baptizer has risen from the dead. And others were saying, no, he's Elijah. And others were saying, well, one of the prophets. But when Herod heard, he said, John, the one I beheaded, he was raised? See, earlier, Herod himself had bound John and put him in prison on account of Herodias, the wife of his brother Philip, because Herod had married her. And John kept saying, it's not legal for you to have the wife of your brother. Now, Herodias was seeking to put John to death, but she wasn't able to because he was afraid of John, knowing him to be a just and holy man, and he was carefully protecting him. When he heard him, he enjoyed hearing him, but he didn't get it. An opportune day came when Herod, on his own birthday, held a banquet for his leaders and his military officers and the most important people of Galilee. And it happened that when Herodias' own daughter came out and danced, she pleased Herod and those with him. And Herod said, ask me whatever you want, and I'll give it to you. And he swore an oath. He said, whatever you want, I'll give you. Up to half of my empire. And the little girl, she went and asked her mother, oh, what should I ask for? And the mother said, well, the head of John the Baptizer. And the girl, whoosh, with haste, went before the king. And she said, I want you to give me right now on a plate the head of John the Baptizer. The king became profoundly sad. But because of his oaths and those reclining to eat with him, he didn't want to refuse her. And summoning the executioner, he sent him to the jail to behead John. Going to the jail, cutting off John's head, he brought it on a plate. Oh, and he gave it to the little girl. Oh! And she gave it to her mother. When John's disciples heard, they came, they got the corpse, and they buried him. When those who'd been sent return, they gather around Jesus. And they told him all that they had done and said. And Jesus said, let's go off privately to a deserted place and rest a while. Because so many people were coming and going, they didn't even have time to eat bread. So they got into a boat and they went off privately to a deserted place. And people saw them and recognized them and ran there on foot through the cities and villages and got there ahead of them. So when Jesus got out the boat, he saw the crowd and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. He began to teach them at length. Now, when it was evening, his disciples came and said, this place is a desert. And already the hour is late. Dismiss the crowd so they can go to the neighboring fields and villages and buy themselves something to eat. And Jesus said, you give them something to eat. And they said, are we to spend 200 days' wages to buy enough bread to feed all these people? Jesus said, just go see what you have. And finding out, they say, 5 loaves and 2 little fish. Jesus had the crowd sit on the ground, group by group in the green grass, and they sat in companies of 50 and of 100. And taking the bread, giving thanks, he broke it and gave it to the disciples to serve to the people, and they served it to them. And taking the little fish, he gave thanks for these also, and had them distribute these as well. And everyone ate and was satisfied. And the disciples gathered up 12 baskets full of leftover scraps. Now there were 5,000 Israelites who ate the bread. And Jesus told the disciples to get into a boat and go to the other side while he dismissed the crowd towards Bethsaida. And having dismissed the crowd, he went up on a mountain and was there alone praying. Now, well into the evening, the disciples were still only in the middle of the boat, or of the sea. And Jesus was on the land alone. About 4 a.m., seeing them straining at the rowing because the wind was against them, Jesus went towards them, walking on the sea. And he was going to go right past them. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they said, it's a ghost! And they shouted because they were frightened. And Jesus said to them, no, take courage. I am. Don't be afraid. And he went towards them into the boat. And the wind stopped. And there was a great calm. The disciples were terrified because they hadn't understood about the loaves. Rather, their hearts were hardened. And they came to Gennesareth and docked. And people saw Jesus and recognized them, and wherever he went, they would bring their sick to him. So that whether he went in the cities or in the villages or the field, they would place their sick in the marketplace and plead with him that they might touch just the hem of his garment. And as many as touched it were restored.